All right, so you guys are throwing out all the acquisition use cases. So let's go into the targeting acquisition. That's the most obvious place. And so we've talked a little bit about the different solutions and think about the walled gardens as well. I mean, for the acquisition function out there for banks and for lenders, that's obviously the growth engine. That's where a lot of the budget is, right? Sarah, let's, since you brought it up originally, I mean, that seems to be the most common use case that everyone's going to focus on initially is the origination is, so it sounds like, the solution, there's a lot of different solutions for targeting the right person. But you mentioned it early on. Measurement of that is going to be key. I just want to dig in a little bit, one more layer is what are the implications for this around the acquisition function? What are the implications about finding the right solution here?
I mean, it's very important for all, I don't know, in the past 200 years, financial services has been an intermediated industry that, really new acquisition and growth was driven by access to physical locations and branches, access to those physical locations and humans to advise you. With digitization, obviously that is diminishing in terms of its importance overall in driving new customers into franchises. And certainly we've seen a real acceleration over the past 5 years of that. And that means marketing is really increasing in importance overall in terms of driving franchise growth and health. And yet in many financial institutions, marketing is still the first port of call when there are budget clawbacks to be made. And
it's not only true in financial services,
but it hasn't yet at many C-suite levels and CFO suites in particular made the leap from being sort of a cost center to really a true strategic engine for growth. Marketers that can point to the contribution that marketing is making overall to the business. And in banks, we have developed a cross-bank marketing mix model that indicates kind of on average, banks are getting somewhere between 20 and 35, 40% of new acquisitions really coming from marketing investment. The banks that can point to the contribution that their acquisition efforts are delivering and the acquisition efforts kind of delivered by each of the channels that they're active in is a really, really strategically important for financial institution marketers. So this concept of tracking, attribution, measurement is a very essential one for financial marketers.
Yeah, especially with the amount of money they pour in, the percentage of budget that's dedicated to acquisition of new customers or new products, is usually the larger part of the marketing budget. So tracking that exactly. It's complex because I'm thinking about, it's not only finding the right people, targeting the right people, and making sure that you know who they are, verifying who they are, right? You've got, being able to personalize the offer or maybe even, provide the right product, matching the right product to the right customer. And then, measuring that and the efficacy of that, all that underlying, it requires an identity infrastructure that is persistent, that is accurate. And in the digital world, we relied on third-party cookie to do a lot of that. And Travis, I'll sort of swing it over to you. So finding the right identity solution to help you do all that and string all that together seems quite challenging. I mean, you can to Sarah's point, it seems like there's no one solution. You know, a couple different solutions could help you do that, but would love your commentary on that.
No, I think that's right. There is, you know, in the post-cookie world, I don't think there's the silver bullet. We get asked that a lot. We go in a meeting and they're like, okay, the cookie is gone. What is the solution? And I think we always have to take a step back and be like, haven't found the solution, probably not going to find it. But there's a few solutions out there. And, you know, so what we've been focusing on at LiveRamp and, you know, is over the past 3.5 years is building our authenticated infrastructure. So we've been working with hundreds of publishers, demand side platforms, supply side platforms to build out an infrastructure that enables publisher authentication events. So I go and I log in on the Wall Street Journal, or I log in on the New York Times to be then connected with marketer events. And we then have our identity at the core so that if a marketer, say a bank, only has the name and postal address, that can still be tied to that email in an anonymous way because it's a people-based identity. We expect, you know, to have around 30% of the open internet login. And that sounds low, but I would make the argument that that's actually pretty high. And Sarah made a really good point earlier that the cookie wasn't that great to begin with. It had huge efficiency problems, right? So if we looked at when we moved data around, we found that we were often finding less than 30% of the actual audience on inventory. And so we just released a case study a couple of days ago in our earnings call on Monday that showed that we were able to double the ROAS for a brand by buying on identity link versus buying on third-party cookies. So I think, you know, that's a great opportunity for marketers who have first, second, or third-party audiences. And the beauty of when you buy on authenticated inventory is it's 100% measurable. You're able to tie every impression you bought back to a real-world event. Now, I think as you look at your prospecting, that's where then those flocks, the contextual comes into play. And I think that you try to blend the two together. So could you use some of your authenticated audiences to better understand the flocks that are visiting your site? Okay, so we know there's 3 flocks that visit your site every day. How do you understand, based on the users of those flocks who do log in, what about those flocks makes them visit your site every day? And then do you customize for that? And then also do you combine the two where you say, I'm going to advertise to this flock, but I'm going to remove out all of the authenticated users because that's my way of doing suppression. So I think a lot of this is going to get around testing it. And this is where we come into now is the time to test. So, you know, I remember in January when Chrome made the announcement, everyone was like, 2 years is so long. You know, and then of course COVID happened and it was, you know, time kind of stopped and we all lived in our homes forever.
6 months went by very quickly.
Yes, yeah. And now suddenly it's like we have 17 months left. And, you know, the IDFA change is 5 weeks away. 5 weeks is going to be here before we know it. Oh, yeah. We've used the majority of the IDFA time, and I would argue most folks are not ready for the IDFA change. So, you know, if you're a marketer listening to this call and you don't know what your solution of targeting in-app is for 5 weeks from now, I think that's something you should definitely have a conversation on. But the same with cookies is it's going to take a lot of testing. You need to test with the contextual. You need to test with the authenticated solutions. You need to work with your agency. You probably need to look at all the different places you use third-party cookies. We were talking with one marketer. They have over 200 different tags on their sites. No, that's 200 different cookie use cases that they're powering on their sites. Each one of them is a project plan to move away. So it's, you know, that you start laying this out and suddenly this becomes a 12 to 18 month project. And well, we're only 17 months away. And I think now is really the time to take action and do some testing on it.
Yeah, Travis, I would triple underscore that. I think it's super critical that that sort of mental framework of experimentation, test, learn, validate kind of new approaches and strategies. Now is the time to be taking those steps and iterating.